3 weeks after the breakup, Ruth Collins still couldn't look at her camera without crying. The equipment sat on her desk like an accusation. Each lens, every memory card, reminded her of what she'd lost. Not just her relationship, but herself. Photography had been her escape, her voice, her future. Now, the thought of framing another shot made her chest tighten with panic. Her apartment in Brooklyn had become a tomb. Takeout containers piled up in the kitchen. Curtains stayed drawn. The outside world felt impossibly far away, like something she'd left behind in a past life when she still believed in happy endings. Melissa had had enough. "You're coming out tonight." Her best friend stood in the doorway, arms crossed, designer purse dangling from her elbow. "I'm not asking." Ruth pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Melissa walked in, grabbed the blanket, and yanked it away. "You've been in these same pajamas for 3 days. You smell like sadness and old pizza. Get in the shower." "Mel." "Shower. Now. I'm not watching you waste away over someone who never deserved you in the first place." Something in her friend's voice cut through the fog. Melissa had always been there, successful, generous, fiercely protective. She'd loaned Ruth money for equipment, connected her with clients, believed in her talent when no one else did. The least Ruth could do was try. 20 minutes later, Ruth stood in front of the mirror in a simple black dress Melissa had brought. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She'd lost weight, the dress hanging looser than it should. A stranger stared back at her. "You look beautiful," Melissa said softly. Ruth didn't feel beautiful. She felt hollow. Before Ruth's world changes forever, like and share this video so you don't miss a single twist in the story unfolding tonight. And welcome to Story Sphere, where every tale pulls at your heartstrings and reminds you what it means to truly feel. Now, I'm curious. Where are you listening from? A quiet cafe? A dimly lit room? Curled up in bed as rain taps against your window? Drop a comment below and let me know where you are, so I can see what corners of the world this story has touched. How many hearts are joining Ruth on her journey to find light in the darkness? If stories like this make you believe in second chances and unexpected love, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another moment that makes you feel something real. Thank you for staying right when everything is about to change. Stay with me, because from here, everything only gets deeper, more emotional, and past the point of return. The restaurant was called Aurelius. Even the name sounded expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. Soft jazz floated through the air, mingling with quiet conversation and the delicate clink of silverware on fine china. Every detail screamed wealth, elegance, exclusivity. Ruth clutched her camera bag like a shield. Melissa had insisted she bring it. "You never know when inspiration might strike," she'd said. Now it just felt like dead weight. They waited near the host's stand. Melissa chatted easily with the maitre d', dropping names Ruth didn't recognize. Around them, women in couture dresses mingled with men in custom suits. Everyone looked polished, confident, like they belonged. Ruth had never felt more out of place. She glanced across the dining room, taking in the opulence she'd probably never photograph. Her gaze drifted past a table near the windows, then snapped back. Her heart stopped. There he was, Daniel, her ex-boyfriend, the man who'd dumped her 3 weeks ago with a text message that read, "I need someone more established. Someone who fits my lifestyle." "I'm sorry." He sat at a corner table, laughing. Thriving. His new fiancée, the wealthy art dealer he'd left Ruth for, leaned into him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Diamond earrings caught the light. Her dress probably cost more than Ruth's rent. They looked perfect together. The room tilted. Sound muffled. Ruth's chest constricted, ribs tightening around lungs that forgot how to work. "Ruth." Melissa's voice sounded distant. "What's wrong?" She couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't stand there watching Daniel live his best life while she was barely surviving. Before Melissa could react, Ruth turned. She pushed through the crowd, past waiters carrying trays, past couples waiting for tables. A hallway appeared on her right, dim, quiet escape. She hurried down it, heels clicking against marble. Doors lined both sides. Storage, maybe. Private dining rooms. She didn't care. The first door wasn't locked. Ruth slipped inside and pulled it shut behind her, pressing her back against the wood. Darkness swallowed her. The air smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and linen. A storage closet. Perfect. She closed her eyes, trying to slow her racing heart. Tears burned behind her eyelids, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not over him. Not anymore. You know. A voice emerged from the shadows. This is usually my hiding spot. Ruth's eyes flew open. She spun toward the sound. In the corner, barely visible in the dim light filtering under the door, a man sat on an overturned crate. Tall, even sitting down. Immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit, though his sleeves were rolled to his elbows and his tie hung loose around his neck. He looked far too composed for someone hiding in a storage closet. Oh my God. Ruth's hand flew to her chest. I'm so sorry. I didn't know anyone was in here. I'll leave. Don't. He held up a hand, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Please. There's room for two. I shouldn't intrude. You're not intruding. I'm trespassing too, technically. A pause. Rough night. Something in the way he asked, genuine curiosity without prying, humor without mockery, made Ruth's shoulders drop slightly. She leaned back against the door. You could say that. Ex-boyfriend. Her laugh came out bitter. How did you know? Only 3 things make someone run into a storage closet at a fancy restaurant. He counted on his fingers, though she could barely see him in the darkness. Family obligations, ex-partners, or business deals gone wrong. You look too young for business disasters, and families usually require alcohol first. Process of elimination. Despite everything, Ruth smiled. Detective work? Life experience. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, exactly. More like 2 people catching their breath. He's here, Ruth heard herself say. My ex. With his new fiancée. The one he left me for. Ah. Understanding colored the single syllable. The upgrade. That's what he called her. Not to my face, but I heard through mutual friends. Someone more established. Someone who fits his lifestyle. She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Translation, someone richer. His loss. You don't know me. I know you're hiding in a closet instead of making a scene out there. That takes remarkable self-control. He shifted and she heard the crate creak. Most people would have thrown a drink, made a speech, done something dramatic. You chose dignity. Ruth's throat tightened. No one had framed it that way before. Even Melissa, supportive as she was, had encouraged Ruth to show him what he's missing tonight. As if Ruth's worth depended on making Daniel regret his choice. What about you? She asked, deflecting. What are you hiding from? A pause. Longer this time. Expectations, he said finally. People. Noise. Everything. That's vague. So is established. She laughed again, surprised by the sound. When had she last laughed? Weeks, maybe. It felt foreign in her throat, rusty from disuse. Her eyes were adjusting to the darkness now. She could make out more of him. Sharp jawline, dark hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. His posture was relaxed, but something in the set of his shoulders suggested coiled tension, like a spring wound too tight. He noticed her camera bag. You're a photographer? Trying to be. She touched the strap self-consciously. I do freelance work. Portraits, events, whatever pays. Daniel always said it was a hobby. Something I'd grow out of once I got serious about my future. Daniel's an idiot. The bluntness startled a laugh out of her. You really don't pull punches, do you? Life's too short for diplomatic lies. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What do you photograph? When you're not doing whatever pays, what calls to you? No one had ever asked her that. Not Daniel, not her family, not even Melissa. They'd asked about clients, about income, about sustainability. Never about passion. Moments, Ruth said softly. The in-between ones people usually miss. The way light catches someone's face when they're lost in thought. The split second before a laugh becomes sound. Those fleeting things that disappear if you blink. Sounds beautiful. It doesn't pay well. The best things rarely do. He was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? People who demand you get serious about anything creative are usually terrified of their own unlived dreams. They see your courage and mistake it for foolishness because it's easier than confronting their own cowardice. Ruth's breath caught. Something in those words struck deep, resonating in a place she'd kept carefully locked since Daniel left. Who are you? She whispered. Someone who understands hiding. That's still vague. Maybe I like the mystery. Despite the darkness, despite the absurdity of the situation, Ruth felt something shift inside her. The crushing weight that had sat on her chest for 3 weeks lightened fractionally. Not gone. Not even close, but bearable for the first time. Thank you, she said. For what? Letting me intrude on your hiding spot. Not asking if I'm okay. Actually listening. Anytime you need to hide, this closet's available. She could hear the smile in his voice. Though I can't guarantee I won't be here first. They sat in companionable silence. Outside, muffled sounds filtered through. The restaurant continuing without them, people laughing and eating and living their lives. In here, time felt suspended, like they existed in a bubble separate from everything else. Ruth checked her phone. 3 messages from Melissa, each more frantic than the last. I should go, she said reluctantly. My friend's probably calling the police. Probably wise. Can't hide forever, says the man in the closet. I have a few more minutes before people come looking for me. Something in his tone suggested he wasn't joking. Ruth stood, brushing off her dress. Her eyes had fully adjusted now, and she could see him more clearly. The sharp planes of his face, the way his dark eyes tracked her movement, the slight curve of his mouth that suggested he smiled more than he let on. He stood too, unfolding to his full height, easily over 6 feet. Broad shoulders, lean build, the kind of presence that would command attention in any room. Wait, he said as her hand touched the door handle. Ruth turned back. He stepped closer. In the confined space, she could smell his cologne. Subtle, expensive, something with notes of cedar and bergamot. Heat radiated from him, and her pulse kicked up for reasons that had nothing to do with anxiety. Can I? He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his features for just a moment. Would it be completely inappropriate if I kissed you? Ruth's breath stopped. We don't even know each other's names. Sometimes that makes it easier. Her mind screamed at her to say no. This was crazy. She'd just run away from her ex. She was hiding in a closet. This man was a complete stranger who could be anyone. Dangerous, married, unstable. But something in his eyes held her frozen. Not pressure, not expectation. Just honest desire mixed with the kind of loneliness that recognized its own reflection. Yes, she whispered. He closed the distance between them. One hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. The other settled at the small of her back, pulling her closer but not demanding. When his lips met hers, Ruth's world tilted. The kiss started soft, questioning, exploratory. Then something ignited. Her hands found his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat through expensive fabric. His fingers tangled in her hair, angling her head for better access. She melted into him, 3 weeks of grief and loneliness and feeling not enough transforming into heat and want and alive. He tasted like whiskey and possibility. They broke apart slowly, both breathing hard. His forehead rested against hers, and Ruth felt his heart racing as fast as her own. Wow, he murmured. Yeah. They stood there for another moment, suspended in the aftermath. Ruth's lips tingled. Her whole body hummed with awareness. This stranger who'd listened to her, seen her, kissed her like she was precious. Who was he? I really do have to go, she said, though every cell in her body screamed to stay. I know. Neither of them moved. Finally, Ruth stepped back. The cool air rushed between them, breaking the spell. She smoothed her dress, tried to calm her racing heart, failed completely. Thank you, she said again. For everything. The hiding spot's always here. Just in case. She smiled, then slipped out the door. The hallway felt shockingly bright after the darkness. Ruth blinked, disoriented, her lips still burning from that kiss. She touched her mouth, half convinced she'd imagined the whole thing. Melissa appeared at the end of the hall, relief flooding her features. There you are. I've been texting. Are you okay? Did you see Daniel? Oh my God, your lipstick is smudged. What happened? Ruth glanced back at the closet door. It remained closed, hiding its secrets. Nothing, she said. I just needed a minute. They returned to the main dining room. The maitre d' was apologetic. Their table had been given away during the confusion, but he could seat them at the bar if they preferred. Melissa started to argue, but Ruth touched her arm. Actually, could we see if there are any seats in the main room? Near the stage. Something was happening. Waiters moved with purpose, adjusting place settings. The lighting shifted, spotlights focusing on a small raised platform at the front of the restaurant. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, an electric anticipation building. They found seats at a recently vacated table. Daniel and his fiancée were still there, 2 tables over. He hadn't noticed Ruth yet, too absorbed in whatever story he was telling. Good. Let him be surprised. A man in an expensive suit stepped onto the platform, tapping a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening at Aurelius. It's my pleasure to introduce the man who made tonight possible. Visionary restaurateur, CEO of Min Hospitality Group, and the owner of this establishment, Kong Min. Applause erupted. People stood. Ruth rose with them, curious despite herself. A figure emerged from behind the curtain. Ruth's breath left her lungs in a rush. It was him. The man from the closet stepped into the spotlight, and the world exploded into sharp focus. He'd fixed his tie, rolled down his sleeves, smoothed his hair. Under the lights, he looked every inch the powerful executive, commanding, elegant, untouchable. If you're already hooked on Ruth and Kong Min's story, hit that like button. And stay tuned because you won't believe what happens when she finds out who he really is. His gaze swept the room, acknowledging the applause with a slight nod. Then his eyes found hers. Time stopped. Recognition flared in his expression, followed by something that looked like surprise, then heat, then careful neutrality. But his eyes never left hers, even as he began to speak. Thank you all for being here tonight, Kong Min said, his voice carrying easily through the restaurant. That same voice that had asked about her photography, that had called Daniel an idiot, that had asked permission before kissing her senseless in a storage closet. What's wrong? Melissa whispered, noticing Ruth's frozen expression. Ruth couldn't answer, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was seeing. That's Kong Min, Melissa continued, oblivious. The Kong Min billionaire, CEO, owns half the restaurants in Manhattan and has his fingers in everything from real estate to tech startups. He's notoriously private. This is rare, him speaking publicly like this. Billionaire. CEO. The words echoed in Ruth's head, refusing to make sense. The man from the closet, the one who'd listened to her pain, who'd kissed her like she mattered, was one of the wealthiest men in New York City. And she'd had no idea. On stage, Kong Min was talking about success, about the pressure of expectations, about how the world saw wealth and power, but never the loneliness that came with it. His words were measured, professional, exactly what people expected to hear. But twice more his gaze found Ruth's. Each time, something passed between them. An acknowledgement, a question, a promise. Sometimes, he said, his voice dropping slightly, the most unexpected moments change everything. We spend so much time hiding from what scares us, we forget to look for what might save us. Ruth's hands trembled. He wasn't just giving a speech. He was talking to her. The applause when he finished was thunderous. People surged forward, wanting to shake his hand, exchange cards, be seen by him. Kong Min accepted it all with practiced grace, but Ruth noticed the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightness around his eyes. He was hiding again, just in plain sight this time. We should go, Melissa said, gathering her purse. Unless you want to stay. The reservation's shot anyway. Ruth nodded numbly. Yes, they should leave. This was too much, seeing Daniel, hiding in a closet, kissing a stranger who turned out to be a billionaire. Her emotions couldn't process any more tonight. They made their way toward the exit. The crowd had thickened. Everyone trying to catch a glimpse of Kong Min. Ruth kept her head down, just wanting to escape into the cool night air and pretend the last hour hadn't happened. Ruth, she froze. Daniel. Of course. She turned slowly. Her ex-boyfriend stood there with his fiancée, both looking at her with expressions ranging from surprise to pity. I didn't know you'd be here, Daniel said, his tone carefully neutral. This isn't really your kind of place. Translation, you can't afford this. Melissa brought me, Ruth said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. His fiancée, Jessica, Ruth remembered, smiled with saccharine sympathy. It's so good to see you doing well. Daniel was worried after. Well, but you seem fine. I am fine. Good, good. Daniel's eyes flicked to her camera bag. Still doing the photography thing? Yes. That's great. Really. It's important to have hobbies. He squeezed Jessica's hand. We should have lunch sometime. Catch up properly. I'd love to hear what you've been up to. No, he wouldn't. This was performance, showing his new fiancée that he was a good person, that he handled the breakup maturely, that Ruth was fine and therefore he bore no guilt. Maybe, Ruth said, knowing she'd never take him up on it. An uncomfortable silence stretched. Jessica looked around the restaurant, her gaze landing on the stage where Kong Min still stood surrounded by admirers. Can you imagine being that successful? She sighed. Kong Min is everything a real entrepreneur should be. Vision, execution, presence. That's the kind of person who makes things happen. Unlike you, hung unsaid in the air. Ruth felt the words like a physical blow. All her old insecurities came rushing back. She wasn't enough, would never be enough, was foolish for thinking. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, grateful for the distraction. An unknown number. Probably spam. But something made her open the message. I didn't want our next conversation to be rushed. And I definitely didn't want it to happen while you were talking to that idiot ex-boyfriend of yours. Dinner? When you're ready. K. Ruth's heart stuttered. She looked up, scanning the crowd. Kong Min stood on the far side of the restaurant, phone in hand, watching her. When their eyes met, he raised his glass slightly. A private toast, a question, an invitation. She smiled. For the first time in 3 weeks, Ruth Collins felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. Ruth stared at her phone, reading the message 3 more times to make sure it was real. Ruth. Melissa touched her arm. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. She slipped the phone into her purse, heart hammering. Can we go now? Daniel was still talking, something about his latest investment opportunity. But Ruth barely heard him. Her entire focus had narrowed to the man across the room. The billionaire who'd hidden in a closet with her, who'd kissed her like she was the only person in the world, who'd just asked her to dinner. This was insane. We really should catch up, Daniel said again, mistaking her distraction for emotional difficulty. I know the breakup was hard, but... Actually, Daniel, I have to go. Ruth cut him off, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. It was good seeing you. Best of luck with everything. She didn't wait for his response. Melissa followed, confusion written across her face, as they pushed through the crowd toward the exit. The November air hit Ruth's face like a splash of cold water. She gulped it down, trying to organize her scattered thoughts. Behind them, Aurelius glowed like a jewel box, all golden light and elegant shadows. Okay, spill. Melissa grabbed her shoulders, spinning her around. What just happened in there? You disappeared for 20 minutes, came back with smudged lipstick, and then turned into a completely different person. Did you take something? Meet someone? Have a psychotic break? Ruth laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. I kissed someone. You what? In a storage closet. I kissed a stranger in a storage closet. Melissa's eyes went wide. Oh my God. Who? Ruth pulled out her phone, showing her the message. Watched her best friend's face cycle through disbelief, shock, and something approaching awe. Kong Min, Melissa whispered. You kissed Kong Min the Kong Min. In a storage closet. I didn't know who he was. He was just there. Hiding. We talked and it was easy and real and then we kissed and... Ruth pressed her hands to her face. Oh God, what am I doing? This is crazy. He's a billionaire. I'm nobody. This doesn't happen to people like me. Stop. Melissa's voice turned sharp. Don't do that. Don't make yourself small because he's successful. You're talented, beautiful, and apparently interesting enough that one of the most eligible bachelors in New York wants to have dinner with you. So what are you going to do about it? Ruth looked at her phone again. The message glowed on the screen, impossible and real. What was she going to do? 3 weeks ago, Daniel had shattered her. Told her she wasn't established enough, successful enough, worthy enough. She believed him, let his words sink into her skin like poison. But Kong Min, a man who could have anyone, who owned restaurants and companies and probably had supermodels on speed dial, had chosen to spend time with her, had listened to her, seen her, wanted her. Maybe she was worth something after all. I'm going to text him back, Ruth said quietly. Melissa squealed, pulling her into a hug. Yes. Okay, but not tonight. Make him wait. Be mysterious. Let him wonder if you're interested. Mel, trust me. Men like him are used to women falling at their feet. You need to stand out. She pulled back, eyes gleaming with strategic calculation. Text him tomorrow afternoon. Keep it casual. Don't seem too eager. Ruth nodded, though every instinct screamed at her to respond immediately. To say yes before he changed his mind, before he realized she was just a struggling photographer from Brooklyn who couldn't even afford to eat at his restaurant. That night, Ruth didn't sleep. She lay in bed, phone on the nightstand, replaying every moment in that closet. The sound of his voice. The way he'd looked at her like she mattered. That kiss, God, that kiss. At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and opened her laptop. Typed Kong Min into Google. The results were overwhelming. Page after page of articles, profiles, business deals. Forbes had named him one of the youngest billionaires in America at 32. He'd built Min Hospitality Group from nothing, starting with a single restaurant in Queens and expanding into an empire that spanned fine dining, real estate, and tech investments. But it was the photos that made Ruth's breath catch. Kong Min at charity galas, always in impeccable suits, always alone. Kong Min cutting ribbons at new restaurant openings, his smile polished but never quite reaching his eyes. Kong Min shaking hands with politicians, celebrities, business moguls, always professional, always distant, always guarded. The articles mentioned his notorious privacy, how he rarely gave interviews, how he'd never been photographed with a romantic partner, leading to endless speculation about his personal life. One profile from New York Magazine included a quote that stopped Ruth cold. "Success is a kind of prison," Kong Min had said. "Everyone sees the wealth, the power, the freedom. Nobody sees the cage. Expectations, people, noise, everything." That's what he'd been hiding from. Ruth closed the laptop, her heart aching for the man in those photos who looked nothing like the one who'd sat on a crate in a dark closet and asked about her dreams. The next afternoon, Ruth sat at her desk, staring at her phone. Just text him. It's not that hard. But her fingers refused to move. What did you say to a billionaire? How did you strike the right balance between interested and not desperate? Every draft she composed sounded either too casual or too formal, too eager or too cold. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "It's just dinner." Except it wasn't just dinner. It was dinner with someone who could change her life, who'd already changed something in her just by existing. The pressure felt enormous. Her phone rang. "Melissa, have you texted him yet?" "I'm working on it." "Ruth, it's been almost 24 hours. You're overthinking this. What if he's changed his mind? What if it was just a moment, and now he regrets it? What if you stop catastrophizing and just send the damn message?" Ruth took a breath. Another. Then typed before she could second-guess herself. "I'd like that. When and where?" Ruth. Simple. Direct. Not too eager. She hit send before panic could stop her. The response came 30 seconds later. "Tonight. I know a place. Quiet, private, good food. I'll send a car. 7 p.m. K. Tonight." He wanted to see her tonight. Ruth looked around her apartment. Laundry everywhere, dishes in the sink, her nicest dress still wrinkled from last night. She had 4 hours to transform from disaster zone to date ready. "He said tonight," she told Melissa. "I need help. Emergency help. All hands on deck help. I'm on my way." Melissa arrived like a fairy godmother armed with makeup, a clothing rack, and enough determination to move mountains. She swept through Ruth's apartment like a hurricane, pulling out options, rejecting most of them, occasionally making disgusted noises. "Do you own anything that wasn't purchased in 2015? I've been busy surviving, not shopping." "Well, lucky for you, I come prepared." Melissa unzipped a garment bag, revealing a deep burgundy dress that looked like sin and sophistication had a baby. "Wore this once, decided it wasn't my color. It'll be perfect on you." 2 hours later, Ruth barely recognized herself. The dress fit like it had been made for her. Elegant but not trying too hard, showing just enough skin to be interesting without screaming desperation. Melissa had done her makeup with a light hand, emphasizing her eyes, making her look awake and alive instead of grief-stricken and exhausted. "You look like someone who belongs in his world," Melissa said softly. "I don't belong in his world. Maybe you're building your own world, and he wants to be part of it." At exactly 7 p.m., Ruth's phone buzzed. "Car is outside." She looked out the window. A sleek black car idled at the curb. Not a limousine, thank God, but definitely expensive. The driver stood beside it, professional and patient. "Go," Melissa urged, "and text me every detail. Every single detail." The drive took 20 minutes, winding through Manhattan's glittering streets. Ruth watched the city slide past. People rushing home from work, tourists taking photos, couples holding hands. Normal life, while she rode in a town car toward a date with a billionaire. This couldn't be her life. This happened in movies, in books, in other people's Instagram stories. Not to Ruth Collins, who bought her jeans at Target and considered Chipotle a splurge. The car pulled up to a brownstone in the West Village. No sign, no indication it was anything but a private residence. The driver opened her door. "Top floor," he said simply. Inside, the building was gorgeous. Original molding, warm lighting, a staircase that curved upward like something from an old film. Ruth climbed, her heels clicking on hardwood, her heart climbing into her throat. The door at the top stood slightly ajar. Soft music drifted out, something jazzy and intimate. Ruth pushed it open. The apartment took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Exposed brick walls, sleek furniture, art that was probably worth more than her entire existence. But it felt lived in too. Books stacked on tables, a blanket draped over the couch, signs of real life beneath the luxury. Kong Min stood by the windows, still in a suit, but more relaxed than last night. When he turned and saw her, something in his expression shifted, softened, warmed. "You came," he said, as if he genuinely doubted it. "You invited me. I wasn't sure you'd want to. After finding out who I am." Ruth stepped further into the room. "Should that have changed my mind?" "It usually does." He moved toward her, stopping a respectful distance away. "People either want something from me or they're intimidated by me. Sometimes both. You're the first person in years who talked to me like I was just a person. In a closet." "In a closet," he agreed, smiling. "Best hiding spot I've ever found." The tension between them was different than last night. Less desperate, more aware. They knew each other's names now. Knew what this could become if they let it. "I Googled you," Ruth admitted. "I'd be concerned if you hadn't. Forbes says you're worth $2.3 billion. Forbes is wrong. It's closer to 3.1. Ruth laughed despite herself. "That's not making this less weird." "What would make it less weird?" "I don't know. Maybe if we both pretend you're not insanely wealthy, and I'm not completely out of my depth." Kong Min considered this. "I can do that. On one condition." "What?" "You stop looking at me like I'm going to disappear if you blink." He closed the distance between them, his voice dropping. "I'm real, Ruth. This is real. Whatever happens next, I'm here because I want to be. Not because I feel obligated. Not because I'm bored. Because in that closet last night, I met someone who saw me instead of my bank account. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since." Ruth's breath caught. Every defense she'd built crumbled under the weight of his honesty. "I haven't stopped thinking about you either," she whispered. His smile could have lit the entire city. "Good. Now can we please eat? I haven't had dinner, and I'm starving." The table was set for two, simple, elegant, intimate. No hovering staff, no pretense. Just them and food that smelled incredible. "You cooked?" Ruth asked, surprised. "God, no. I'd burn water. But I have an excellent chef who prepared everything before leaving us alone." He pulled out her chair. "I thought privacy would be better than a restaurant. Less pressure. More honest conversation." They ate and they talked. Really talked. Kong Min asked about her photography. Not the business side, but the art. What called to her. What she saw through the viewfinder that others missed. He listened like her words mattered. Like her dreams were worth pursuing even if they didn't make financial sense. Ruth asked about his empire. Not the money, but the building. What drove him? What kept him up at night? He opened up in ways the articles never captured. Talking about the pressure of expectations, the loneliness of success, the fear that people only saw his wealth. "Everyone thinks money solves problems," he said, refilling her wine. "It does in some ways, but it creates others. You never know who's genuine, who actually likes you versus who likes what you can do for them." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." His eyes met hers. "That's why last night was so unexpected. You didn't know who I was. You just needed a hiding spot and found a stranger who understood. And kissed him. And kissed him," he agreed, his gaze dropping to her lips. "Best decision you've made in weeks." Cocky. Confident. Heat simmered between them. Not the desperate, raw need of last night, but something slower. Deeper. More dangerous. They moved to the couch after dinner, talking until the city lights blurred and the wine bottle emptied. Kong Min told her about starting his first restaurant with money he'd saved from working 3 jobs. Ruth shared about her mother, who'd raised her alone and taught her to see beauty in ordinary moments. He asked why she'd chosen photography. She asked why he'd chosen this life. Their conversation wove together like threads, creating something neither had anticipated. At midnight, Kong Min walked her to the door. The night felt suspended, hovering between ending and continuing. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Tomorrow, or whenever you're free." Ruth smiled. "Tomorrow works. Lunch, or dinner." Or coffee? Or all three? Dinner. I have a photo shoot in the afternoon. A shoot? For what? Corporate headshots. Pays well, but it's boring. Nothing about you is boring. Then he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. No desperation this time. Just certainty. When Ruth finally made it home at 1 a.m., Melissa was waiting on her couch, eating ice cream and vibrating with curiosity. Tell me everything. Ruth collapsed beside her, grinning like an idiot. I think I'm in trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble? The best kind of trouble. The next week blurred together like a dream Ruth was terrified of waking from. Dinner became 3 dinners. 3 became 5. 5 became breakfast the morning after she'd stayed up talking until dawn at his place, neither wanting the night to end. Kong Min showed her New York through different eyes. Private rooftop gardens she didn't know existed, tiny restaurants in neighborhoods she'd never explored, art galleries after hours when they could be alone with the paintings. He asked questions about her work, her dreams, her fears. Actually listened to the answers. Ruth showed him her world too. The parks where she shot street photography, her favorite bodega run by a family who'd known her since she moved to Brooklyn, the tiny movie theater that showed old films on weekends. Watched him relax in spaces where nobody recognized him, where he could just be Min instead of Kong Min, billionaire CEO. They were falling. Both of them knew it. Neither said it aloud, as if naming it might shatter the spell. On their 7th date, Ruth had stopped counting, but Melissa kept a running tally. They walked through Central Park as snow began to fall. Fat flakes drifted down, catching in Ruth's hair, melting on Kong Min's shoulders. He caught one on his palm, watching it dissolve. I haven't done this in years. What? Walked in the snow. Just existed. Without an agenda. Without networking or deal-making or managing expectations. He looked at her, something vulnerable in his eyes. You make everything feel simple. Life is simple. People complicate it, says the woman whose ex-boyfriend told her she wasn't established enough. Ruth flinched. She told him about Daniel during dinner 3 nights ago. The whole painful story tumbling out over pasta. Kong Min had listened without interrupting, then said 3 words. He's an idiot. Sometimes I still hear his voice, she admitted now. Telling me photography is a hobby. That I need to be realistic. That I'm not enough. Kong Min stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Snow fell around them, the city muted and magical. Listen to me, he said quietly. You are enough. You've always been enough. Daniel couldn't see it, because he was too busy measuring worth in bank accounts and social status. But I see you, Ruth. Your talent. Your passion. Your kindness. And I think you're extraordinary. Tears burned in her eyes. You barely know me. I know that you hide in closets instead of making scenes. I know you see beauty in moments other people miss. I know you make me laugh and think and want things I'd forgotten I could want. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears that had started to fall. I know that I'm falling for you. And I think you're falling for me too. Ruth's breath hitched. This is crazy. We've known each other a week. So, when did time become the measurement of feeling? People will talk. They'll say I'm a gold digger. That I'm using you. Let them talk. I don't care what anyone thinks except you. Your world is so different from mine. Then we'll build our own world. His voice was fierce now, certain. Ruth, I've spent years surrounded by people who want something from me. You're the first person in forever who just wants me. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious? She did know, because she felt the same way. After Daniel, after being told she wasn't enough, Kong Min looked at her like she was everything. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. I'm terrified, but I'm falling. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of all the words they hadn't said yet. Snow fell around them, the park disappeared, and nothing existed except this moment. This man, this impossible thing blooming between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Kong Min pressed his forehead to hers. Stay with me tonight, he said. No expectations. I don't want this to end yet. Ruth nodded, unable to form words. They caught a cab back to his place, hands intertwined, neither speaking because the silence said everything. Inside, he made hot chocolate, expensive stuff that tasted like melted dreams, and they curled up on his couch, watching the snow fall over the city. Tell me something true, Ruth said softly. Something you've never told anyone else. Kong Min was quiet for a long moment. I'm lonely. All the time. I'm surrounded by people constantly, employees, investors, associates, but I'm desperately lonely. Success was supposed to fill something, but it just made the empty space larger. Ruth's heart ached. Thank you for telling me. Your turn. Tell me something true. She took a breath. Sometimes I wake up and forget for a second that the breakup happened. Then I remember, and it's like losing him all over again. Not because I miss him. I don't, not really. But because his words got inside me, and I don't know how to get them out. You will, Kong Min said firmly. Those words are lies. Eventually, you'll believe the truth instead. What truth? That you're talented, beautiful, worth everything. His arms tightened around her. That anyone who gets to be part of your life is lucky. Including me. They fell asleep on the couch, wrapped around each other, snow falling silently outside. Ruth woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Kong Min sat by the window, looking at something on his phone, dressed in sweats and looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Morning, he said when he noticed her stirring. Coffee's ready. Also, I have a proposition. Ruth sat up, immediately suspicious. What kind of proposition? The legitimate kind. He came over, handing her a steaming mug. I have a business dinner tomorrow night. Investors, potential partners, all very boring and necessary. I need a date. You want me to come to a business dinner? I want you to come everywhere with me. But yes, specifically this dinner. Min, I don't know anything about business. I'll say something wrong or use the wrong fork or... You'll be perfect, he interrupted. You don't need to know about business. You just need to be yourself. These people will judge me. Probably. They judge everyone. He sat beside her, taking her hand. But I want you there. Not because I need arm candy or to impress anyone. Because I'm tired of pretending my personal and professional lives are separate. Because you make everything better, including boring business dinners. Because I want to show the world that I'm done hiding what matters to me. Ruth's heart swelled. That's a lot of pressure. Only if you let it be. Otherwise, it's just dinner with some suit-wearing people who take themselves too seriously. You've survived meeting your ex at a fancy restaurant. You can survive this. She laughed despite her nerves. When you put it that way. So you'll come. Yes. But if I embarrass you, you won't. And even if you did, I wouldn't care. He kissed her softly. You're worth more than any business deal, Ruth. I need you to believe that. The dinner was at another exclusive restaurant. Not Aurelius, but close enough in atmosphere and price point that Ruth felt her old insecurities creeping back. She wore the burgundy dress again, armor and vulnerability wrapped into one. Kong Min picked her up personally, and his face when he saw her made every nervous moment worth it. You're stunning, he said simply. You have to say that. You invited me. I never say things I don't mean. He offered his arm. Ready. The restaurant was already full when they arrived. Heads turned as Kong Min entered, whispers rippling through the space. Ruth felt the weight of dozens of eyes, assessing, judging, calculating. Then Kong Min's hand found the small of her back, possessive, protective, proud. The message was clear. She's with me. Deal with it. They were led to a private room where 5 people waited. 3 men in expensive suits. 2 women who looked like they'd walked out of a fashion magazine. Everyone stood as they entered, greetings exchanged with professional warmth. Everyone, this is Ruth Collins, Kong Min said. Ruth, these are the people who think they can convince me to invest in their tech startup. One of the men laughed. He's not wrong. We're shameless. Ruth relaxed slightly. At least they had a sense of humor. Dinner started well enough. The conversation revolved around business, market trends, investment strategies, growth projections. Ruth stayed quiet, listening, trying to follow along even when the terminology went over her head. Then one of the women, Catherine, a marketing executive, turned to her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. So Ruth, what do you do? Every person at the table looked at her. Ruth felt the question for what it was. Not genuine curiosity, but assessment, judgment. I'm a photographer, she said, keeping her voice steady. Oh, how fun. Catherine's tone was bright and condescending. Like weddings and things. Freelance work. Portraits, events, editorial when I can get it. That's wonderful. It's so important to have hobbies. There it was. The same dismissive language Daniel had used. Hobbies. As if her passion, her talent, her entire career was something cute she did in her spare time. Kong Min's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. When she glanced at him, his expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes said, You've got this. It's not a hobby. Ruth said quietly. It's my career. Of course, of course. Catherine waved a manicured hand. I just meant it's nice that you have something to keep you busy. Not everyone needs to be in business, after all. One of the men, James, the CEO, chimed in. Are you at least monetizing it? Building a brand? Instagram following? I'm focused on the work more than social media. Ah! He exchanged a glance with his partners. That's admirable. But in today's economy, you need to be strategic. Visibility is everything. Translation: you're doing it wrong. Ruth felt herself shrinking, all her old doubts flooding back. These people, successful, wealthy, connected, saw her exactly the way Daniel had. A nice girl with cute aspirations who didn't understand how the real world worked. Actually, Kong Min said, his voice cutting through the conversation like a blade, Ruth's approach is brilliant. While everyone's busy chasing followers and metrics, she's building a portfolio of genuine art. Quality over quantity. It's a long game, but it's the only game worth playing. The table went quiet. Everyone recognized the shift. Kong Min defending her, claiming her, making clear that disrespecting Ruth meant disrespecting him. Of course, James backtracked quickly. I didn't mean to suggest. I know what you meant. Kong Min's tone was pleasant but firm. And you're wrong. Ruth's talent is extraordinary. She sees what others miss. That's not a hobby. That's a gift. Warmth flooded Ruth's chest, but she also felt something else, awareness. These people had been dismissive, yes, but Kong Min's protection, while appreciated, also highlighted the gap between them. He had to defend her. She couldn't defend herself in this world. The rest of dinner was strained. Conversation returned to business, but the warmth had evaporated. Catherine and James were overly polite, performing friendliness while clearly reassessing their pitch. The others watched with careful neutrality. When they finally left, Ruth felt exhausted. Kong Min was quiet in the car, his jaw tight with residual anger. I'm sorry, he said finally. They were out of line. They were honest. They were rude. Same thing sometimes. Ruth looked out the window. They're not wrong, Min. I don't belong in that world. I don't speak the language. I don't play the game. Good. That world is shallow and exhausting. It's your world. The words hung between them. Not accusatory, just true. This was his reality. Business dinners and investors, and people who measured worth in metrics and market share. She could visit that world, but she'd never belong to it. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. Back at Kong Min's apartment, Ruth kicked off her heels and collapsed on the couch. Her head ached. Her heart ached worse. Talk to me, Kong Min said, sitting beside her. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking this is impossible. Ruth's voice cracked. I'm thinking those people looked at me and saw exactly what Daniel saw. Someone who hasn't figured life out yet. Someone playing at art instead of doing real work. Their opinions don't matter. Yes, they do. She turned to face him, tears threatening. They matter because they're your world. Your colleagues, your investors, your peers. And they think I'm not good enough for you. I think you're good enough for me. Isn't that what matters? For how long? The question burst out before she could stop it. How long before you start seeing me the way they do? Before you realize I'm the girl who hides in closets while your ex thrives? Before my lack of success becomes embarrassing? Kong Min's face went pale. You think I care about that? I think everyone cares about that eventually. I'm not Daniel. His voice was fierce. I'm not him, Ruth. I don't measure people by their bank accounts or social status. I measure them by who they are, what they value, how they treat others. And by every metric that actually matters, you're extraordinary. You say that now. I'll say it forever if you'll let me. He grabbed her hands, pulling her closer. Listen to me. I've dated women who checked every box on paper. Successful, beautiful, connected. They were perfect. And they bored me to tears. Because they wanted Kong Min, billionaire. Not Min, person. You're the first woman in years who sees me. Who likes me. Who doesn't want anything from me except my time and attention. That's not true. I want. Ruth stopped, but it was too late. What? What do you want? I want you to see me, she admitted, tears finally spilling over. Really see me. Not your charity case. Not your fixer-upper. Just me. That's all I've ever seen. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, both on the edge of something that felt too big to name. I'm scared, Ruth whispered. Me too. Of what? You have everything. I have money. That's not the same as everything. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. I'm scared you'll realize I'm just a guy. that the wealth and success is packaging for someone fundamentally lonely and broken. I'm scared you'll see through me and leave. I already see through you. That's why I'm here. Then stay. His voice broke slightly. Please. Whatever doubts you have, whatever fears, we'll figure it out. Together. Just don't walk away because other people are small-minded. Ruth closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to protect herself, to run before she got hurt again. But another voice, quieter, braver, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was worth the risk. Okay, she breathed. Okay. He kissed her then, desperate and relieved and grateful. They clung to each other on the couch, the city lights blurring outside, neither willing to let go. That night, for the first time, Ruth stayed. Really stayed. They made love slowly, carefully, learning each other in the dark. Afterward, wrapped in expensive sheets, Kong Min held her close and whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For taking a chance on me. On us." Ruth kissed his shoulder. "Thank you for being worth the risk." They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in weeks, maybe years, Ruth felt safe. But safety is fragile, and the world they'd tried to hold at bay was about to come crashing in. 3 days later, Ruth's phone exploded. She woke up to 73 notifications. Text messages, Instagram DMs, emails from people she hadn't talked to in years. Confused and still half asleep, she opened Twitter. Her face stared back at her. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Her and Kong Min leaving his building, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing at something. The timestamp said 2 a.m. The headline read, "Mystery Woman, who is Kong Min's secret girlfriend." Ruth's stomach dropped. She scrolled through the comments, each one a small knife. She's not even pretty. Definitely a gold digger. He could do so much better. She looks basic AF. What does he see in her? Bet she's using him for money. Tale as old as time. Her outfit screams, trying too hard. Girl, we see you. Hundreds of comments. Thousands. All dissecting her appearance, her worth, her motives. People who'd never met her, never spoken to her, felt entitled to judge everything about her existence. Ruth's hands shook. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. Kong Min called 30 seconds later. "Ruth, I'm so sorry. My security is tracking down who leaked this. We'll issue a statement." "A statement saying what?" Her voice came out strangled. "That I'm not a gold digger? That'll make it worse. Everyone will think I am. Then we ignore it. These people don't matter. They're calling me ugly, Min. They're saying I'm using you." "There," her voice broke. "They're saying exactly what I was afraid they'd say. Ruth, I need to go. I have a client shoot this morning." She hung up before he could respond, then immediately felt guilty. None of this was his fault. But the comments had ripped open every insecurity she'd tried to bury, and facing him right now felt impossible. The photo shoot was a disaster. Ruth couldn't focus. Every click of the shutter reminded her of the paparazzi photo, of strangers examining her like a specimen under glass. Her hands trembled. She missed shots she should have nailed easily. The client, a law firm partner getting new headshots, noticed. "Everything okay?" he asked, concerned. "Fine. Just having an off day." But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. By afternoon, the story had grown. More photos surfaced. Her and Kong Min at the park, at a restaurant, walking hand in hand down a street she didn't even remember. Someone had been following them, watching, waiting for the perfect shot to sell. Her privacy shredded. Her relationship dissected. Her worth debated by thousands of strangers who'd made her their afternoon entertainment. Ruth turned off her phone and cried. Melissa showed up an hour later with wine and righteous fury. "Those people are miserable trolls with empty lives. They don't know you, but they know what they see. A nobody dating a billionaire. It doesn't make sense to them. Since when do you care what strangers think? Since they confirmed everything Daniel said about me." The words burst out, raw and bleeding. "That I'm not enough. That I don't belong. That someone like Min should be with someone better. Daniel was wrong. These people are wrong. Min clearly doesn't think they're right, so why do you believe them over him?" Because deep down, Ruth had always believed them. The comments just gave voice to the doubt that lived in her chest, whispering that good things didn't happen to girls like her. Kong Min showed up that night. Ruth almost didn't let him in, but he stood outside her door looking so worried, so genuinely distressed, that her resolve crumbled. "I handled it," he said immediately. "Threatened legal action against the photographer. Had my team scrub what they could from the internet. It's not gone, but it's contained. That's not the problem. Then what is? Ruth showed him her phone. Scrolled through comment after vicious comment, watching his face darken with each one. These people are cowards, he said finally. Anonymous nobodies taking shots because they can. They're saying what everyone's thinking. They're saying what jealous, small-minded people think. There's a difference. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Ruth, listen to me. You are beautiful. You are talented. You are worthy. Some random person on Twitter doesn't get to decide otherwise. But what if they're right? What if I am using you, even subconsciously? What if? Stop. His voice was firm. You're not. You've never asked me for anything. You paid for coffee last week even though I offered. You feel guilty when I buy you dinner. You're the least gold-digging person I've ever met. Your world is judging me. Then screw my world. I told you we build our own. But building a world sounded exhausting. Defending herself against an endless tide of criticism sounded impossible. Ruth felt herself drowning, and no amount of reassurance could pull her to the surface. They didn't fight that night, but tension stretched between them, invisible and suffocating. The business dinner happened 3 days later. Kong Min had wanted to cancel, but Ruth insisted. Hiding would just confirm what everyone said, that she couldn't handle his world. She needed to prove them wrong, needed to prove herself wrong. The dinner was at a private club, the kind with membership waiting lists and hushed conversations about hedge funds and political influence. Ruth wore her best dress, practiced her smile in the mirror, armored herself with determination. It didn't help. The investors were polished, educated, casually dropping references to schools Ruth had never attended and vacation homes in places she'd never visited. They asked her the usual questions: what she did, where she was from, how she and Kong Min met. She answered honestly. Freelance photographer. Brooklyn. A restaurant. Their smiles were polite. Their interest non-existent. One woman, Victoria, a venture capitalist, turned to Kong Min. You should have Ruth photograph our next company retreat. It would be such a fun little project for her. Little project. As if Ruth's career was a cute hobby to indulge. Ruth's schedule is actually quite full, Kong Min said, his tone edged with warning. Oh, I'm sure she could fit us in. What's your rate? We'd pay, of course. It's important to support emerging talent. Emerging talent. Code for. You're not established yet. Ruth felt herself shrinking in her chair, getting smaller with each word. These people looked at her and saw exactly what the internet saw. Someone who didn't belong. A charity case Kong Min had taken pity on. The rest of dinner blurred. Conversations happened around her, investments discussed, deals negotiated. Ruth nodded when appropriate, smiled when expected, and felt invisible. When they finally left, Kong Min was furious. Victoria was incredibly condescending. I'm calling her tomorrow to. Don't. Ruth's voice was flat. She was being nice. That wasn't nice. That was patronizing. That's how your world sees me. Min, someone to pat on the head and humor. Someone who's cute but not serious. That's not. It is. She turned to him, exhaustion weighing down every word. I don't fit in your world. I don't speak their language. I don't have their education or connections or confidence. And no matter how much you defend me, that won't change. I don't want you to fit in their world. I want you in my life. Those are the same thing. The words echoed in the car. The driver kept his eyes straight ahead, professional and deaf to their fight. They're not, Kong Min said quietly. My business world and my personal life are separate. Not for me, they're not. Every dinner, every event, every time I meet your colleagues, I'm reminded that I'm not enough. That I'm the girl who hides in closets while everyone else thrives. You're the girl who's brave enough to pursue her passion despite people like Victoria. That's not weakness, it's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like constantly failing a test I didn't know I was taking. They arrived at her apartment. Ruth got out without waiting for Kong Min to follow. He caught up to her at the door, grabbing her hand. Ruth, please. Don't shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm being realistic. She pulled her hand away gently. Your world and mine don't match. Eventually, you'll resent that. Eventually, you'll want someone who fits effortlessly instead of someone you constantly have to defend. That's not true. How do you know? We've been together 3 weeks. What happens at 3 months? 3 years. When do I stop being novel and start being a liability? Never. His voice cracked. Ruth, you're not a liability. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years. I'm exhausting you. No, you're saving me from a life where everyone wants something, where every interaction is transactional. You're real, Ruth. That's rare and precious, and I'm not letting it go because some investors have sticks up their asses. But Ruth was already shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. I need time to think, to figure out if I can do this. Do what? Be with me. Be in your world without losing myself completely. Kong Min looked like she'd punched him. So what? We take a break. You decide if I'm worth the trouble. That's not fair. None of this is fair. His composure finally cracked. I found someone who sees me, who likes me for me, and the world is trying to destroy that because you don't have enough zeros in your bank account. That's not fair, Ruth. But I'm not walking away. Are you? The question hung between them, heavy and terrible. I don't know, Ruth whispered. I don't know anything anymore. She went inside, closing the door softly. Heard Kong Min stand there for a long moment before his footsteps retreated down the hall. That night, Ruth slept alone. Or tried to. Mostly she stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every doubt that had built between them. Was she running? Or protecting herself? Was there even a difference? The next morning, her phone had one message. From Kong Min. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Ruth cried reading it. Not because it was sweet, though it was, but because she didn't know if she'd ever be ready. If she'd ever be strong enough to stand beside him without crumbling under the weight of everyone's judgment. 2 days passed. Ruth ignored Kong Min's calls, his texts, the flowers he sent with a note that said simply, I miss you. She threw herself into work. Edited photos until her eyes burned. Took a last-minute portrait session. Anything to avoid thinking about the man she was pushing away and the life she was too scared to claim. Melissa finally staged an intervention. Enough. You're being an idiot. Thanks for the support. I'm serious, Ruth. You found someone who loves you. Yes, loves you, don't make that face, and you're sabotaging it because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm realistic. You're terrified. Of being hurt again. Of not being enough. Of taking a risk and failing. Melissa grabbed her shoulders. But here's the thing, you're going to fail. Everyone does. The question is whether failing while trying for something amazing is better than playing it safe and regretting it forever. What if I can't handle his world? Then you don't. You build a different one. Together. That's what partnerships are, Ruth. 2 people creating something new, not one person contorting themselves to fit into someone else's life. He said almost the exact same thing. Then he's smarter than he looks. Melissa softened. You deserve happiness. You deserve someone who sees your worth. Kong Min does. Don't throw that away because strangers on the internet are assholes. Ruth knew Melissa was right. Knew she was self-sabotaging, protecting herself from potential hurt by inflicting certain hurt instead. But knowing and doing were different things. That afternoon, Kong Min texted. Meet me? Central Park, the bench where it snowed. 3 p.m. Please. Ruth stared at the message for 10 minutes. Then texted back. Okay. The park was cold. Winter's settling in with determination. Ruth arrived early, nerves eating her alive. What if he'd changed his mind? What if he'd realized she was right, that they were impossible? Kong Min appeared right at 3 p.m., looking tired but determined. He sat beside her, maintaining careful distance. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry, Ruth said immediately. For pushing you away. For letting fear control me. Stop. He turned to face her. You don't need to apologize for being scared. Fear is human. Understandable. I've been scared too. Of what? That I'm not enough for you. That my money and world and baggage will suffocate what makes you special. That you'll wake up one day and realize this life isn't worth it. Ruth blinked. I thought you were confident. I'm good at pretending. Doesn't mean the fear isn't there. He took her hand carefully like she might bolt. Ruth, I don't want you to fit in my world. That world is shallow and exhausting and full of people like Victoria who measure worth in dollars and connections. I want us to build our own world. One where your art matters, where my success doesn't define us, where we get to decide what's important. That sounds impossible. So did hiding in a closet with a stranger 3 weeks ago. Yet here we are. Despite everything, Ruth smiled. Here we are. I love you. The words came out simple, honest. I know it's fast. I know we're still learning each other. But I love you, Ruth Collins. Your passion, your talent, your kindness. The way you see beauty in ordinary moments. The way you make me feel human instead of like a walking bank account. I love you, and I'm willing to fight for this if you are. Ruth's heart cracked open, letting light flood in. I love you too. I'm terrified, but I love you. Then let's be terrified together. We'll figure it out. Set boundaries. Choose what matters. Tell the rest of the world to screw off. Your investors won't like that. My investors don't sleep beside me at night. They don't make me laugh or challenge me or remind me why life's worth living. You do. He cupped her face. I'm choosing you, Ruth. Over expectations, over business, over everything. The question is whether you'll choose me. Tears streamed down Ruth's face. Yes. Yes, I choose you. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of relief. Around them, park visitors passed by, but they existed in their own world, just as he'd promised. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Kong Min smiled. Ready to scandalize some investors? What? My parents want to meet you. Next week. Fair warning, they're intense. Ruth laughed through her tears. Of course they are. But if you can survive that, you can survive anything. Meeting Kong Min's parents was exactly as terrifying as advertised. They lived in a penthouse overlooking the city, all marble and art and casual wealth that made Ruth feel like she'd wandered onto a movie set. Mrs. Min was elegant and sharp-eyed. Mr. Min was quiet but assessing, watching Ruth like she was a puzzle to solve. Dinner was formal. 7 courses. Multiple forks. Ruth focused on not making any etiquette mistakes while answering their polite interrogation, disguised as conversation. So you're a photographer, Mrs. Min said, making it sound like a curiosity. How artistic. Ruth's incredibly talented, Kong Min said firmly. Her work has been featured in several galleries. That was generous. 1 small gallery, 1 group show. But Ruth appreciated his defense. Galleries don't pay bills, Mr. Min observed. How do you support yourself? Freelance work mostly. Portraits, events, commercial shoots when I can get them. Practical. He nodded approvingly. Many artists forget that commerce and creativity must coexist. Ruth relaxed slightly. Maybe this wouldn't be a disaster. Mrs. Min set down her wine. You understand, of course, that Min's life is complicated. Public scrutiny, business obligations, security concerns. It's not an easy world to navigate. I'm learning that. Are you prepared for it? Truly. Her gaze was penetrating. Because if you're not, it's kinder to step away now before anyone gets hurt. Kong Min stiffened. Mother. It's okay, Ruth interrupted. She looked directly at Mrs. Min. You're right. Your son's world is complicated and overwhelming and sometimes cruel. I'm not prepared for it. I don't think anyone could be. But I love him. Not his money or status or connections, him. The man who hides in closets and listens like I matter and sees me when everyone else looks through me. That man is worth learning to navigate everything else. Silence fell over the table. Then Mr. Min smiled. Well said. Mrs. Min studied Ruth for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps you're stronger than you look. I'm stronger than I think, Ruth said quietly. Your son reminds me of that. The rest of dinner was warmer. Still formal, still testing, but with an undercurrent of acceptance Ruth hadn't expected. When they left, Mrs. Min actually hugged her. Take care of him, she whispered. He's been lonely for too long. So have I. Meeting Ruth's mother was a different experience entirely. Her mom lived in a tiny apartment in Queens, the place Ruth had grown up in. Nothing fancy, worn furniture, photos covering every surface, the smell of home cooking and old memories. Kong Min arrived in jeans and a sweater, looking more nervous than Ruth had ever seen him. She's going to love you, Ruth assured him. What if she thinks I'm too old for you? Or too wealthy? Or, Min breathed. Her mother opened the door and immediately pulled Ruth into a crushing hug. Baby, you didn't tell me you were bringing someone. Mom, this is Min Min. This is my mom, Carol. Carol looked Kong Min up and down, then smiled. You're the one making my daughter happy. I'm trying, he said. Good. Come in. I made too much food as usual. Dinner was chaotic and warm, and everything Ruth's world was. Mismatched plates, laughter, stories interrupting each other. Kong Min relaxed completely, asking Carol about her work as a nurse, admiring the photos of Ruth growing up, fitting into their small space like he'd always belonged. After dinner, Carol pulled Ruth aside. He's good for you. You can tell after one dinner? I can tell by the way you look at him. Like he's home. She squeezed Ruth's hand. Your father would have liked him. Ruth's throat tightened. Her father had died when she was 12, a heart attack, sudden and devastating. He'd been the one who gave her her first camera, who taught her to see beauty in ordinary moments. "I think so too," she whispered. Before they left, Carol pressed a container of leftovers into Kong Min's hands. "For later. And Min, thank you for seeing what I see in my daughter. Thank you for raising someone so extraordinary." In the car, Kong Min was quiet. Then, "Your mom is wonderful. She liked you. I liked her." He paused. "Your families couldn't be more different. Does that bother you?" "No. It makes me hopeful. If we can bridge that gap, we can bridge anything." Ruth leaned her head on his shoulder. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Building our own world." "We are. Together." 2 weeks later, Kong Min asked Ruth to meet him at an address in Chelsea. "Why are we at a gallery?" she asked, confused. "Just come inside." The gallery was small but beautiful. High ceilings, perfect lighting, white walls waiting for art. But it wasn't empty. Ruth's photographs covered every surface. Her work, printed large, professionally framed, displayed like they belonged in a museum. The moments she'd captured. Light through a window, a stranger's contemplative face, the split second before joy became laughter. All the beauty she'd seen and frozen in time. "Min," her voice broke. "What is this?" He led her to the center of the gallery, where a plaque hung on the wall. Ruth Photography Studio founder. Ruth Collins, opening spring 2025. Ruth couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was seeing. "This is yours," Kong Min said quietly. "The space, the equipment, the startup capital. Everything you need to build your dream. I can't accept this. It's not charity. It's an investment." He turned her to face him. "I invest in things I believe in. Companies, restaurants, people. You're the best investment I'll ever make, Ruth. Your talent deserves a platform. Your art deserves to be seen. I'm not rescuing you. I'm giving you the tools to rescue yourself." Tears streamed down Ruth's face. "This is too much. It's not enough. It'll never be enough for what you've given me." He wiped her tears away. "You reminded me what matters. You showed me that success without meaning is just emptiness wearing expensive suits. You saved me from becoming the hollow shell everyone expected. This," he gestured around the gallery, "this is me saying thank you. And I believe in you. And I love you." Ruth kissed him, desperate and grateful and overwhelmed. When they broke apart, she was laughing through tears. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll make this gallery the most talked about space in New York. Say you'll fill it with beauty and prove everyone wrong. Say you'll let yourself be extraordinary. I'll try. That's all I'm asking." They walked through the gallery together, Ruth planning where each exhibit would go, what series she'd develop, how she'd make this space her own. Kong Min watched her come alive with possibility, and his heart swelled with certainty. This was right. She was right. They were right. 3 months later, on a cold February evening, Kong Min asked Ruth to meet him at Aurelius. "Why?" she asked. "We haven't been back since. Just trust me." The restaurant was as elegant as ever, but Ruth walked through it differently now. Not as someone who didn't belong, but as someone who'd earned her place through surviving. The staff recognized Kong Min, of course. They didn't recognize Ruth. Good. She preferred it that way. Kong Min led her down the familiar hallway, past the private dining rooms, past the offices, to the storage closet at the end. "Are we seriously hiding again?" Ruth laughed. "Not hiding. Returning." He opened the door. The closet had been transformed. String lights hung from the ceiling, casting warm golden light. Rose petals scattered across the floor. Candles flickered on shelves. And on the same overturned crate where they'd first sat, a small velvet box waited. Ruth's breath stopped. Kong Min pulled her inside, closing the door behind them. In the soft light, his face was nervous and hopeful and determined. 3 months ago, he began, I was hiding in this closet from my own life. From expectations and pressure, and the exhausting performance of being Kong Min, billionaire. Then you burst through that door looking terrified and beautiful and real. And everything changed. Tears already streamed down Ruth's face. You reminded me that life is more than balance sheets and investments. That connection matters more than success. That being seen is more valuable than being envied. He picked up the box, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the light and threw stars across the walls. "Ruth Collins, you are my hiding spot. My safe place. My home. Will you marry me?" Ruth dropped to her knees beside him on the closet floor, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Yes. God, yes. Always yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit, like everything with him, and kissed her the way he had that first night. Desperate and sweet and full of promise. They stayed in that closet for a long time, wrapped around each other, laughing about how absurd and perfect this was. How they'd started in a hiding spot and were now building a life together. Finally, they emerged. Walked back through the restaurant hand in hand, Ruth's ring catching every light, both of them glowing with happiness. At their table, the same one Melissa had tried to get that first night, champagne waited. Along with both their mothers, Melissa, and a few close friends. People who mattered. People who'd supported them. Surprise, Kongmin whispered. Thought we should celebrate properly. Ruth looked around at the people who loved them, at the man who'd chosen her, at the ring on her finger that symbolized a future she'd been too scared to imagine 3 months ago. She'd gone from hiding in closets to building a life, from feeling not enough to knowing she was everything. And it all started with a stranger on a crate who'd asked about her dreams. 1 year later, the Ruth photography studio opened to rave reviews. Critics called Ruth's work haunting and intimate. Collectors bought pieces for their personal collections. Most importantly, Ruth felt proud. She'd built something real, something lasting, something entirely hers. Well, mostly hers. Kongmin was there for every opening, every exhibition, every triumph and setback. Not as her patron or benefactor, but as her partner. Her husband. They'd married quietly 6 months after the proposal. Small ceremony, close friends, no paparazzi. Just 2 people who'd found each other in the most unlikely place, promising to keep finding each other every day after. Life wasn't perfect. Ruth still struggled with insecurity sometimes. Online trolls still commented on her photos, her relationship, her worth. Business dinners with Kongmin's colleagues could still be uncomfortable. But they'd built their own world, just as he'd promised. One where her art mattered, where his success didn't define them, where they decided what was important. On their anniversary, Kongmin surprised her with one final gift. A photo, grainy, taken from security cameras, time-stamped from that first night. 2 people in a storage closet. Ruth pressed against the door, Kongmin on his crate, both looking lost and lonely and searching for something. Before, Kongmin said simply. Ruth looked at the photo, then at their life now. The gallery bearing her name. The apartment they'd bought together, decorated with both their histories. The ring on her finger. The man beside her who still looked at her, like she hung the stars. We were both hiding, she said softly. And now we're not. No, Ruth agreed, kissing him. Now we're found. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, warmth glowed. And in a storage closet somewhere in Manhattan, the light still burned. A beacon for anyone brave enough to hide until they were ready to be seen.